Hello, I'm Pamela Davis. Welcome to episode 186 of the Well Done Life podcast. And hello, welcome back to episode 186 of the Well Done Life podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Davis. If you are new here, hey, how are you? Welcome. I hope that you'll stay for a very long time. If you've been here before, you guys know the deal. I love you deep. Thank you so much for continuing to support me on this journey. I wouldn't be here without you, and I hope that you will stay for a very long time and bring a friend. Before we get started with this week's episode, it is really important to me to be really foundational. And for those of you that have been listening to me for a while, you probably could recite this with me, but it's just very important to me that I make sure that we all understand why we are here, and that you understand that this safe space that I've built, this safe space, I treat it like a house. And I want to make sure that our foundation is really strong. So for me, the most important thing for our foundation is that we talk about the two main tenets of it, and that is clarity and love. Clarity, really straightforward. I just want to make sure that you understand that the Well Done Life brand is a brand that I created for women because I believe the women are the foundation of society. I think we need places where we can tell our stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we don't have to worry about sitting in judgment. We can inspire each other through our journeys. We can support each other. We can be the warm hug that each of us needs and not even know it. And I want to make sure that I let you know it, that I connect you. So this is the space for that. This is the space where we laugh, we cry, we do it all together because each of us has a role in this and we need each other in order to move forward. So welcome to this safe space. And then along that line, my other tenet is actually my favorite tenet, and it's love. I believe in love. I'm a sucker for love. Love is the most important thing. So for me, it is very important that when I want to show love, that I send you prayers. I think it's really important that we pray for each other. I really do. I think, obviously when they say two or more people come together in prayer, our prayer is magnified. And I personally am of the belief that my prayer is not the only one out here. So let's magnify prayers and bring some positive energy into us together. And so that leads me into this week's prayer. This week's prayer, the first thing that I want to pray for you to have is rest. Yes, I am saying it. I want you to have rest because it has been a long week. It has been a long couple of weeks. April has been quite a month. It's been beautiful and crazy and challenging and heartbreaking and all of the things all in one fell swoop. And I just want to say that it is time to get some rest because we're at the end. We're coming up into the end of April and it has been quite a journey. Q2 came off with quite a bang. And so I want to make sure that you are prioritizing rest. I hope that you will take a moment to just sit in stillness and allow your mind not to think about anything that does not serve you, that you listen to your breath, that you allow yourself to be regulated in your mind and in your soul and your spirit, and that you allow yourself to sleep and just do things for you. You've got to have some you time, make sure you prioritize that because you deserve it. And then along that line with rest, I really also want to make sure that I am sending prayers of clarity because in situations where you have a moment to rest or where you need a moment to rest, a lot of times clarity is lost because you're in a season where you're so busy and there's so much coming at you at one point in time. The one benefit of clarity is that sometimes in order to get it, you have to sit down. You have to get still. You have to be clear and in your mind and your spirit. You have to allow yourself to process and just things become clear. So I want you to be clear about where you are, clear about what you need, clear about, how you're feeling, and own your emotions. Own them because they are valid. A lot of times we put how we're feeling on the shelf to make other people feel good. And we have to get to a point where we realize that that doesn't serve us. And we have to realize that there are people in our lives that can understand how we feel, even if it doesn't align with theirs, and still respect it. Not necessarily like it, but at least respect it, because we have to recognize that really respect is what is necessary. It is not about someone liking you or being able to understand and do what you want them to do, but at least they can respect you enough to understand that that is your position and to allow you to move forward without any type of interruption, trepidation, or anything from them so that you can wind up doing what aligns with you. We need to do more about what aligns with us. So far, like I said, I'm granting you prayers. I'm sending you prayers of peace, rest, and clarity. And I'm also sending you prayers of you, like I said, kind of getting clear in regards to standing about your feelings, owning yourself. And maybe that's the best way to say it, I guess. It's like the ability to own our emotions, own our feelings, whether they are good or bad, but own them. Because a lot of times we are, like I said, experiencing so much, and we, again, push our emotions down to make other people feel good. And we have to stop. We have to stop. We have to own ourselves, because especially at this level of life, it's like, if we don't start owning ourselves now and being who we were called to be, when are we going to do it? I mean, time is flying. It is flying, and people are dying every day. And it's like, what are we waiting for? Life we're not Benjamin Button. We don't get younger. We get older. And so it's just very important at this stage of ourselves that we own who we are, and we realize that that's okay. And that actually is a beautiful thing. And that is a goal, to own our emotions, own ourselves, and be the best version of who we are. Because if you can own who you are now, imagine who you'll be as you continue to grow and evolve. You've got to own who you are in order to own even more of yourself. I mean that, and I know it probably sounds really kind of crazy to say, because now when I said it, I'm like, that does sound a lot, but you do. You have to own who you are in order to own more of yourself. Because if you can accept yourself right now in the space where you're not where you want to be, where you might have more work to do, or, you're striving toward achieving another level, and you're just like, I want more. But if you can be grateful for where you are now, if you can own who you are now, that's where the next level unlocks, because you've shown an understanding and an acceptance and a grace and gratitude for the journey that you have endured so far, so that you can continue to expand and grow and still love yourself in the process. So that's really what it's about: loving yourself in the process, owning yourself, because you deserve that. We all deserve to be able to live that life. Because to me, when we own ourselves, there's a level of freedom in owning ourselves. We recognize that we're not perfect, and we love it about ourselves either way. And we don't make excuses for it, but we definitely continue to try to evolve and grow. So I don't know, that may have sounded jumbled up, but hopefully it didn't. I feel like it came across really well in my spirit, but I don't know. And then my final prayer is that, like I mentioned earlier, time is fleeting. People are dying every day. We're not Benjamin Button. We're not getting younger. I'm sending you prayers of being able to communicate your emotions and say the things that are on your heart. Don't wait until tomorrow to tell people that you love them. If you love them, tell them. Give people the value of your emotions and your thoughts, especially those ones that you love, because it's not promised, and life changes in an instant. Don't waste time with anger or frustration. If there are little things that you can get through and you can move past, it is better to let that go. Because trying to argue with people to make them see your perspective is not necessarily energy well spent. And let me say that again. Trying to argue with people to get them to see your perspective is not necessarily energy well spent. Because again, you have to realize that people are operating from exactly where they are. And it is not your responsibility to make people understand who you are. If they understand you, great. If they don't understand you, great. Your obligation in this life is to live your best life, to love yourself fully, to own who you are, to be the best version of you, and to just be open and loving and giving. Why are you worried about trying to clear up people's misunderstanding or misinterpretation of you? That's not your job. I'm at that point of life where I'm realizing, like I said, it's more important to me to spend time letting people know that I love them, versus me trying to, combat any misunderstandings. And because a lot of times that misunderstanding, again, is rooted in someone else's perception. And I can't change anyone's perception. No one can change anyone's perception. The only thing that you can change is you. And that in itself is a concerted, thought about effort. So that's why I'm saying, just kind of think about that, how you spend your time, what you share, how you love. Life is more important than fussing and fighting. And there's just so much of it now. It's just very weighty and heavy. And it doesn't make sense in all instances. Like I see some of this stuff going on in the news with celebrity and all that kind of stuff, because you can't help but look at all the junkiness of it all. And I'm just like, some of this is some of the most petty things that I've ever seen. And these are grown behind men and women going back and forth over the stupidest stuff. When there are people dying, when there's love to be made and experiences to be had, it's like we focus so much sometimes on the wrong thing. So that's why I said at this point, it's not worth the energy to trying to correct misunderstandings. I'm of the belief that obviously I let my actions and my attention speak for me. And if there's things that are brought to my attention that are a challenge, I'm definitely willing to have conversations and work it out. But the thought of going back and forth with somebody is not going to be something I'm going to entertain, because I just don't have the energy to give. And I think a lot of us need to recognize that we just don't have the energy to give. And you know what? That's okay. It doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just maybe just says, you know what? This isn't worth my time. And right now I have other things and other people and other experiences that I need to focus on. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, protect your energy, protect your neck, protect your soul and your spirit, and go out here and live the best version of your life that you can. So those are my prayers for you this week. I hope you feel the love that I have for you. And I really, again, like I said, I want to thank you for being here with me. I am recording on Friday, April the 26th at 7:30 p.m. Yes, it has been a week. It has been a month. It has been a lot. But I'm so glad to be here. I want to thank everyone for their continued support of my last episode, Uncommon Favor. Episode 185. I really thank you guys. That was something different for me, but it's just something in my spirit. Again, kind of like what I was saying, I don't have time to argue with folks about petty things. I'm really in a season where I want to focus on the uncommon favor of my life, where I want to focus on having deep conversations with my friends and being supportive and loving and intentional with people. Life's too short for anything else. So that's where I am at. And so I hope that you will glean some opportunities to maybe recognize where uncommon favor is present in your life, and that you will cultivate it even more, because there is just so many blessings that God wants to bestow upon us. And so I really hope that it will continue to bless you. And I'm sure as we continue through the year, uncommon favor will come up again, because there's just seasons of blessing and favor all around us. Even in the seasons where we feel like we're in the wilderness, there is favor around us. It's just a matter of aligning so that we can focus our thoughts on that versus focusing on the things that we're trying to work through, because you got to learn how to surrender. But that's a whole nother conversation. But this week, I'm actually here with a guest. Yes, I have a guest. I am very excited about introducing her to you. We connected through social media because, of course, social media tends to always be the great connector. But we got a chance to sit down and have a conversation in preparation for her book that is coming out, Enough with the Secrets, Mama, an immigrant woman's story of overcoming failure, equipping women with the skills needed to enjoy a fruitful life free of maternal heartache, by Lin Green. And so I'm very excited to share our conversation, because it has, like I kind of mentioned in the interview that you'll hear, I have encountered a lot of women dealing with mother wounds. And it seems like there's something intentional in regards to wanting to heal these wounds that's coming up. You'll hear in the interview, we talk about some intentional moments that we noticed around this topic. And so I'm very glad to be able to introduce this into our conversations, because I do think that there are things to discuss. No matter the relationship that we have with our mothers, we do have to understand that many of our mothers come from situations where they are not cultivated to be loving and supportive and nurturing. And a lot of our mothers were just operating from spaces of trauma themselves while trying to mother us. And so it definitely is interesting to talk about the impacts, to talk about the journey, to talk about how you heal past them. So if everyone will sit back and relax, maybe grab a cup of water, some tea, wine, a mimosa, whatever floats your boat, because I know y'all are listening to this on Sunday morning, or just in general without. I just want you to relax and enjoy Lin, and she will be with you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'd like to say I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and this is truly, I had listed you in my marketing plan without an idea that I would ever have the chance to sit here and talk to you. So I am so grateful. Number one.
Oh my God, thank you. I'm so honored that you said that. Because just from reading your book, and just learning about you as a person, that means so much to me. So thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So I am Lin Green, born as Lin Mary Bernabe. I've been married, obviously. And so that's where I took on the Green last name. I am an author, an advocate, a public speaker, a freelance writer, a writer by heart. As far as I can remember, I have always wanted to be a writer. And so I finally get an opportunity to do that through my work of healing and through working with the public. This is truly a dream come true, both the writing of the book and the ability to share my story.
Well, I'm very honored that we get a chance to partake in your story, and I'm looking forward to seeing how many women are impacted by it. And so it's kind of interesting. Normally, when I always talk to guests, I always ask them, when did they decide to make these pivotal moments in their life, where they've, branched out and helped other women? I guess for you, from reading your story, and we're going to obviously talk more about it, I guess, when did you decide within yourself, even if you recall when you were young, did you always know that you would be in a position to share your experience?
I know I wanted to. I have been, just like so many young girls that I have, or actually women now, but when they were young girls, were in absolute awe of Oprah. And it's interesting because no one spoke English in our household other than myself and my siblings. And I remember listening and watching Oprah and saying, number one, I want to be just like her. And number two, how amazing that these people are on here sharing their story. And it impacted me as a young girl listening to people's stories. And I knew that I wanted to be able to have that kind of impact at some point. I didn't know to what extent, but clearly life had, God had his own plans, and life has really worked itself out that way for me. So yeah, I would say I did somewhat know as a kid, but it wasn't until I got much older and lived through those experiences that I speak of in the book that I knew for sure I had to tell my story.
Yeah, and kind of diving into it, because it is kind of hard not to. Obviously, your book centering around, obviously, your experiences in your childhood with your mother and your siblings, and just kind of watching how your life unfolded in that way. I guess in that moment, as you were like going through that, as you were growing and finding out who you were, what is the one thing that kind of always struck you about your relationship with your mom growing up?
I would say for sure that it was distant. She was an awesome mother, provided for us the best way she could with what she had. But she was distant emotionally. That would be the biggest thing that stands out for me, is that emotional distance and my need to connect with her, or my want to connect with her. I can't remember if I mentioned this story in the book, and I've reread the book a million times as I was editing, but am always reminded of this because my mother tells a story about how I used to hide things and then say, "Oh, I found it," and it's usually something that she was looking for. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until I got older that I realized, as a kid, what I was doing was just trying to get some attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I went about doing it. So that's what stands out for me the most. It's just the emotional distance.
Because when I was reading your book, one of the things to me that stood out about it is I wonder, do you feel like the way that your mother was because of how she was raised? Like when I was reading it, I was like, especially when you're talking in the sense of when you were younger and experiencing those things with her, trying to get her attention. I wonder now, looking back on it, were you able to see any of the possibility that some of the things that maybe she may have experienced made her into who she was? Or do you just feel like that's just who she is and that's what it is?
Absolutely. I do believe that it was her upbringing. And that's why I started the book pretty much diving into that, how she was raised and how she came up and her experiences, because I really wanted to dive deep into where did this come from? How did we get here? So I in order to understand that, I needed to dig deep into who she became and how she became the woman that she was. So in our family, she is known, as you read, as a strong pillar.
Yes.
And so she's always maintained that strong willpower, that independence, even while married. And I remember seeing that powerful woman. But I knew that what happened to get her there. And so I, for sure, wanted to dive deep into how that came about. And I came to understand that was a lot, that had a lot to do with it, for sure.
Do you think now, and obviously as you've gone through your healing journey, and we'll talk more about it, I guess, too, because I feel like, unfortunately, this is a trend that I feel like there's a lot of women who are, recognizing the wounds of motherhood, and you see the generational trauma, the branches of it and how it affects them. Do you feel like, obviously, when you were coming into that understanding, it wasn't something, or when did you come into that understanding? Do you think that it happened exclusively when you obviously were going through therapy and trying to recover and understanding and writing this book? Or do you think even as you started to mature, did you start to see like, okay, this is why she is the way she is?
Certainly through therapy. And I credit therapy so much for my ability to think beyond the here and now and consider all things before taking things personally, because that's exactly what I was doing. That's exactly what I was doing. And what was happening was that I was saying to myself, what more can I do? I feel like I'm this perfect child. I have accomplished so much and I made sure that I have. And why is there a disconnect here? Or why do I feel like, I don't get that love and attention that maybe my siblings were getting? And there was a point in my adulthood, this was post me having my own child, that I had that breaking point. And that breaking point came at a time where I felt disrespected. And I wanted to cleanse myself of that and allow myself the time to feel it. And there's so much power in that. And I know a lot of people have said that, but you have to literally sit in your hurt and understand where that comes from and how you can move past it. And you have to consider all the things that play a part in your emotional turmoil, so to speak. So it was in that moment that I decided to do the growing for myself. And then once I got past that, I started to consider, where can we salvage this? What can we do to improve it? And that happened over time, but I had to establish some boundaries for sure. And I had to grow through it.
Yeah. And I get that, and kind of like, I guess, framing it up, because like you said, you were that child who, you did really great in school. You worked. I remember reading how you were, having a job, and you were giving your paycheck to your mother to make sure that she had what she needed for the bills, like to make sure you and your siblings had everything that you needed. And you did that like without any kind of trepidation. Because, normally teenagers are like, well, I need to hold on to it for me. But that wasn't you. You, to me, in that moment, were already showing you're an adult, even though you were still, like you were saying, you were in high school, you were, just trying to work and support your family. Do you feel that at that point in time, it was like you kind of started mothering yourself?
In some way, yes, for sure. Definitely felt like the tables had turned. It was a really awkward experience because I literally was the only breadwinner at some point, and I had not even graduated high school.
Right.
And so I, living in the moment, you're just moving right along because that's just what you have to do. You have to pick up the pieces and keep on pushing. And I know I had to, school was always number one for me, and that wasn't an issue at all. If anything, my concern was providing for my family. Right. And I felt it was a very different kind of, I can't explain it in words, but it was weird. Yeah, for sure. I felt like the tables had turned, and I just took on the role because I felt like I had to.
How did you stop doing that?
I decided that I was going to go away. I decided that once I graduated high school, I went off to college, and I knew that I had to provide for my own now. And I had to create a life for myself and for my son, who at the time was about 1-2 years old. And so I did that. I said, I have to move away. I have to start my own life, and I can not continue to be for her and for my family what I have been, and also be what I need to be for myself. I need to move on and grow. And so I did. I moved away. That's how I ended up here in the Orlando area.
Yeah. So you decided, like you said, you bet on yourself, because it just seemed like, again, from reading the book and just for everyone's context, your book is definitely, it's kind of like, it's your autobiography. It's your story and how you got to where you are and how you are with your mother and your siblings and just the experiences that you've had. And you have experienced a lot of different traumas. In those cycles of traumas, in those cycles of making the decision to move away, just so everyone has the same context, I guess, how did you, because you're mothering yourself, how did you kind of navigate that with your mom? Did you just decide, oh, I'm just going to keep it to myself? Or did you give her a chance to kind of step in to show you that maybe she can kind of be a mom again?
It's strange because I kind of carried on through life by this point, not really expecting too much more as far as what she could give me, because she had shown me by that point that, what her limits were as far as mothering was concerned, where her strengths were and where her weaknesses were. And so because I knew those things, I didn't expect much in certain areas. However, as I moved along, I did kind of, maybe because now I had moved to a completely different town, away for the first time ever in life from my family. Yeah. That maybe she would want to be involved and know, like, how is it going in your, career now that you've moved away from home? Where are you living? Can I come visit? Those things. And so when that didn't happen, I just kind of grew numb to the expectation of what could be. I just kind of met her where she was and just kept on rolling.
And I think that is something that a lot of people adopt, a lot of women, because like you said, you get to that point where you recognize the person is not going to be able to be what you want and you keep on rolling. Sometimes you push the limit and, try to get it to be there, but you always have approached it with such a matter of factness. And I'll be honest, I noticed that even when you were writing your book, it's just like, okay, this is my journey from all the things that I've went through, and the emotion there, but it's very matter of fact. Do you find that, compartmentalization is like a big thing to kind of help you navigate that, to help make sure you're able to keep it that way? Or how do you keep that aligned?
Yeah. And I think the compartmentalization of it all happens with a life and experience, right? So, and we will talk about that in the context of trauma, let's say, because I do express some trauma that I experienced as a child. And that trauma was, child molestation or sexual abuse. And so I did compartmentalize those things very early in childhood. And I feel like that was now my coping mechanism. That's just how things rolled from there on after. I didn't know any other way, because I felt even in the foundational developmental parts of my life as a child, that was my response. And so thereafter, every time I experienced a similar circumstance in terms of a stressor or something that was upsetting, I compartmentalized that and I kept on moving, because at the end of the day, I had a goal. I knew I did not want to ever be a victim. And it's interesting to say that as an adult, that as a child, and I got that from Oprah, that as a child, I knew I did not want to be a victim. Right. Being a victim was not a good thing. And so I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be stronger than that. And I wanted to push past my limits. And that's where you see a lot of that matter of fact, kind of living, because I didn't see any other way.
Yeah, because like I said, just from reading your book, you can see it. Like I said, you see the emotion, but you see you were like, to me, a mini adult at all the time. And I think that's obviously, I think that's sad in certain instances, because I think obviously you missed out on being a child. And it just made me, as I was reading, I was like, this young woman has never experienced, feeling safe as a child.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes. And that's certainly, as I got into adulthood, I realized that I did not have, I missed out on just being silly and being a kid. And that's how my personality developed. My mother used to say, oh, she's the serious one, and I was the serious one because I felt like that was me. That was me. I was serious. I was focused. I had a mission. I had to make good grades. I had taken on the responsibility of making sure my mom was happy, or at least as far as I could control. And that's a lot for a kid. And so I felt like I had to grow up pretty quickly, because I felt like I had this responsibility. And so, the little bits and pieces of childhood that I did enjoy, I cherish with everything in me. Things like enjoying music and enjoying the arts. That's like reading and writing was everything to me, because I felt like this was a different world. And I could imagine myself being, back when a journalist was in an office and working in an office building, I imagined myself at the computer, way, working for a and that's kind of what I had worked up in my head. So it was very grown up-ish. And that's pretty much how I've lived my life.
Wow. That makes me wonder. Well, I have one question, I guess, to ask in relation to that. So what do you do now to feed your childlike behavior?
Well, I finally got back to reading. I got back to writing, which is how my book was born. My blog was born first, and then my book. So that really feeds my soul. Vacation. And I feel like going away is like freedom for me. I can
Yeah.
just let loose and I can explore. I was a tomboy, and so trees and doing things outside was something that really filled me up. And so I, as much as I possibly can, enjoy those moments. I do. Fishing,
Good.
I go fishing with my husband, even if
Mhm.
really I'm just watching him fish and I'm reading or just watching the waves. But those are the things that I just take so much joy in.
Mhm. I'm
Hmm.
glad, because I was wondering that too. I was like, I hope that as you've healed and as you are healing, that is one thing that I find since you lost your child a
Yes,
little, that you give it back to yourself, at least in those ways. You know?
absolutely. Last year when we did, my sisters and I do vision boards
Yes.
the end of the year, and I found the word fun, like big letters, and I took that and I said that is definitely happening. Like I
Yeah.
am inserting fun as much as I possibly can throughout my year and for years on out, because I feel like sometimes I do get a little tunnel vision and focused,
Mhm.
kind of like how I am right now as I'm preparing for the release of my book. But
Right.
I had to remind myself, like, throw some fun in there, do something fun, go dancing, listen to
Yeah.
music, something silly, whatever it is.
Yes, because your inner child deserves the life that you didn't have before
Yeah.
now. So I'm so glad that you are nurturing that.
Yeah.
Kind of pivoting a little bit, I have a question.
Mhm.
What does forgiveness look like to you now?
Forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others is so different for me.
Hmm.
Primarily, I would say forgiveness of self. I had to start there. I
Hmm.
had to forgive myself for not allowing my inner child to grow, for not allowing myself to actually explore more of life, for feeling like I had to be so rigid and focused. And so I felt like I lost out on so much in my life for a period of time because of that. So I had to forgive myself for those things and forgive myself for the things that maybe that happened in my life that weren't according to my plan, because I'm very much a plan ABC kind of person. And so I map it all out. And when those things don't come to fruition, because why shouldn't they? Like, I've actually done all my research and I've taken, I actually was pretty hard on myself. So I
Hmm.
had to learn to forgive myself for those things, releasing and just surrendering,
Hmm.
especially with regard to forgiveness of others,
Yes.
knowing that it is not in my control. And most importantly, that things can improve, but they may not improve 100%. They may only get better 90%. And there may not ever be a total happy ending, but understanding that just take that 90, be happy with it, and know that that 10% is out of my control, and just learn to forgive and show compassion towards others, because we're only able to do the best that we can do with what we have, right?
Right. And I just think it's interesting that you would say that you had to work on forgiveness of yourself because, again, a lot of the things that you experienced as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And those things were out of your control. You were dependent on someone's care and you weren't able to get what you needed. And in a lot of instances, you became that person to yourself. So I find it interesting that you would say that. How does that impact then the perception of forgiveness for your mother?
It makes it a lot easier, I think, to forgive her when I have literally just put that on myself,
Mm.
because I cannot say for certain that she expected this of me.
Hmm.
I just kind of assumed that that was the case, so it made me better understand, because I never communicated it either. I never said, and there wasn't, and I think I mentioned this in the book, that sometimes we grow up in certain cultures, you're the child and they're the parents, and you just do as you're told, and you don't argue, and you don't make your opinions known, or your concerns, because there was no gentle parenting. That was as gentle as it got. You just did what you were told, and you kept it moving. So we never had an opportunity where I felt comfortable to say, I feel this way and this is why, so I had to understand that. And so it really made me understand her a little better.
I just think that is great. But I also, in a flip, I'm like, that's a lot. It's a heavy work because you, again, are putting that responsibility on yourself to be the catalyst, to be the weight as to why things, are the way they are. How do you preserve your feelings, especially as you're growing and healing? Because, everybody be light, you have to be honest, you got to let it go, you have to do so many things. How do you do that and not carry resentments?
Boundaries. I have learned to establish boundaries to the point where at least now I'm actually making that decision. I am setting it in stone, and I'm saying this is as far as I'll go with this, and I make it known that that's a boundary. I can protect myself that way, whereas before I couldn't establish a boundary. Like what is a boundary? You just do as you're told, and there is no other way around it, But once I was able to, in adulthood, establish those boundaries, which, by the way, took a period of time where my mother and I weren't talking, and being able to establish the importance of respect from her to me. And, in turn, we were able to thereafter establish a better relationship.
Because fighting for your respect from your parent, especially as an adult, it's not for the weak. It's not for the weak. Even if you have like a really great mom, I had a really great mom, but even she and I have had our moments where we recognize that, we're very similar people. And with that similarity, you have to understand that if you're not going to tolerate it, do you think I'm going to tolerate it? And we just have to learn how to coexist together. But again, I was just curious because again, that's such a heavy weight for you to carry. But I'm glad that you have that perspective about the boundaries and the balance, because I sense always, again, the strength in you not to let that weigh you down anymore, which I think is beautiful. Yeah. Now that you have written the book, I mean, obviously, and you've put it out here, just for everyone else, how is your relationship now?
It's amazing. I like to say that I've officially reached the favorite position in my family within my siblings. And that's for a number of different reasons, but primarily because and I don't like that she still does this. And I mean, at this point, she's 78 years old. Don't tell her I told you that.
Oh, that's okay. My mom's 77, so I get it.
And she's set in her ways, and there are some things that just are not ever going to change, and I'm not going to force it, and it is what it is, and I've just learned to deal with it. I take it as it comes. But like my sisters tell me all the time, they're like, I don't know how you do it. And I literally can sit there and listen to her and disagree with her wholeheartedly. And I just am quiet, and I let her speak her mind, and I keep it moving. But we have such a great relationship. She respects me so much. She is very proud of me. She knows now what I do.
Nice.
We've gotten very well acquainted since we moved her here from Miami last April. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And in so many ways, it's so It's such a melancholy feeling, even because I'm seeing her in her old age needing us more.
Yeah.
And just wanting to be there for her. And, again, those feelings of somewhat feeling responsible for her happiness in her last days has also, it's kind of like it's come back around, but in a different way, in a way that she can really recognize and acknowledge and appreciate, which is the best that I could ask for.
Oh, absolutely. Because if there's one thing as I was reading your book, as honest as it was, you to me were so respectful about how everything went. I mean, and you've gone through some things where obviously you didn't have to be respectful, I'm going to be honest, because some of the scenarios, and I'm not telling everyone everything because I want you to read her book, but there was the level of deference, the level of care with how you communicated your personal story is something to show. Do you attribute that to the forgiveness or to the respect that you had cultivated?
I would say to the forgiveness, the respect, and to my upbringing, because even though there was that, what I said was the emotional disconnect, she was an amazing mother. She taught us from day one to be respectful of everyone we came in contact with. And so I had that as an example, and it was easy because I knew that she deserves that respect. I would give that respect to anyone, but even beyond a lot of the hurt that I had experienced as a daughter in our home, I knew that she deserved this respect. And so I wanted to tell the story of my life from my perspective, honoring her history and what she was going through as well. And just coming to an understanding of how did we get to where we were and how can we make it better? So I really wanted to focus towards the end of the book, especially on that healing journey, how I got there and how I was able to develop that forgiveness and build the compassion and grace for her, even though there was some times in the past where I was livid, like tears and just heartbroken. And I just didn't understand how she couldn't understand me. But for sure, I knew that she still deserved that respect. So I was going to carry that out.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's an important thing to highlight because like I was kind of mentioning a little bit before we got started, I feel like now you're seeing a lot more women talk about mother wounds. And I think no matter how amazing your mother was, at certain points, depending upon what they went through, there were wounds that, have impacted how they were able to raise you. And as daughters, typically the oldest daughter, the middle children, we are the ones who carried the brunt of a lot of those frustrations that they went through, the feelings that they experienced, or just like you said, the lack of empathy and emotion that maybe they experienced, they carried down. So being able to see you be so thoughtful about it and open that bridge, I think is important to talk about. That makes me wonder, when you were writing this book, what was one of the hopes that you would feel that someone would get from reading it?
That they can find healing regardless of how tragic their story, their circumstance or situation. I know how deep that mother wound goes. And when you have this foundational relationship, this mother-daughter relationship that is supposed to be tight and there's supposed to be this amazing bond and that it's supposed to make you feel safe. And when you don't have that, there's so much that happens inside that affects the way you carry on in life, the decisions you make, the relationships that you enter into, how you handle yourself. within those relationships. And part of the reason why I knew I had to share my story was because in my walk, in my everyday life, whether it's been in speaking engagements that I've done or through the advocacy work that I do within the community, the more I talk to women, the more I realize that there are many of us who have experienced this. And the hurt that I can feel within those conversations, I got it. I've experienced the very same thing. And I knew that was it, that's what I had to do, that I had to share my story. And I had to be very strategic about it, though. And I knew I did from the very beginning, because what I wanted was to be as transparent and vulnerable as possible and just put myself out there, which was the hardest thing for me to do.
I get it.
Because I am an extremely private person. As you can see,
yes,
that was just something that I knew if I was being tugged and nudged and pushed in that direction, I knew that I had to do it. And the more I came in contact with women with the same stories, the more I knew that I had to tell my story. And so enough with the secrets, Mama was born.
I'm so glad that you did that, because one of the things when you were writing, or I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, I know you're telling this from an immigrant's perspective, but I'll be honest, as an African-American woman, I've experienced the same type of behavior. And it literally, like you said, it is truly cross-generational, it's cross-race. Like, I think, again, we all have to think about how our family was raised. They weren't taught to parent us, They had us, but they weren't taught how to parent us. Like, I'll be honest, there's nobody really teaching us how to be parents. We're taking those same things. So it creates this generational cycle. And so I think you being so courageous to write your story in the way it is, I personally feel like anyone can pick up this book, and you may have had an experience with your mother or other women in your family, even probably a man with their mother, because mother wounds extend to men just like they extend to women as well, could see themselves in there and start to build the bridge for this conversation. So I think it's important that you've done this. What is the direction that you're looking at going with putting your story out there? Because like you said, now you're very private. You put it out there. You're out here now. What do you want to do with being out here?
Just like you say all the time, I'm outside now. Like, literally.
Yeah.
There is no turning back. But, I feel like, when you were saying that child inside of me that never got a chance to, to just come right out and just run with the wind. I feel like this is my opportunity to do that, because it's challenging me in that way. And it's challenged because I've not done that. I'm used to being in my shell, or at least I was used to being in my shell. I am literally out and about at every opportunity I have. And that speaks volumes to when someone has a passion and desire and has a mission and there's a focus, and I just want freedom from all the hurt and pain that a lot of the daughters are experiencing, or the mothers even are experiencing as they're now raising their children, struggling between that. I want to be a better parent, and I want to be that generational, cycle breaker. I know that I have to do that. And so I am putting myself out there so much more. Every opportunity I get to speak my story, to encourage someone, even the young ones. I've spoken at a couple of high school events, and I just feel like it's necessary. So I'm hoping that I can continue to have those opportunities so that I can connect with people and just kind of help release some of that hurt as much as I possibly can, or at least crack the door open to healing, and knowing that it's possible.
Oh, I love that because you already, just from like reading your book and getting to know more about you, you have a spirit, obviously, of advocacy. That's what you do. And so having that opportunity to serve people in that way just shows the genuineness of you. And people need that in order to feel comfortable with it. Because let's be honest, digging up our mother wounds, our childhood wounds are really hard. And some of us, especially as women, we really struggle with opening up with each other because of traumas that we've experienced in other women relationships. So it's really nice to be able to see someone who just authentically just wants to serve the people with her story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you like keep yourself open? What are you doing now to protect that energy, to keep yourself wanting to stay pliable and not go back in the shell because you're outside?
No. Well, it's funny. I shared something on my social media the other day that was actually sent to me from one of my best friends, and her live. It was Sarah Jakes Roberts, and the live said, "We're outside," and with the context of this, a lot of us are in this season of pushing past our comfort zones and just doing things that are outside of our norm for the sake of reaching those goals and for the causes that we so deeply and passionately care about. And that was a confirmation for me, even though I'm in the midst of that now. So I know that I have to continue to do that. There is no turning back. I'm going to continue to do it as long as I'm able to. The book itself is a promotional process that's not just a few months worth. This is long term. And I've already translated the book into Spanish. And so that will open up opportunities to put the book out in Spanish to reach another major audience of people who need to hear the story and need to heal as well. And furthermore, as we're talking about being outside, every writer, every author always has another book idea, and beyond the opening up the possibility for my mom to tell more of her story, I know for sure another relationship I have to really dig deep into is my biological father, that relationship. And so that's going to take a journey. It's definitely going to be an adventure, and that in itself is going to be another outside. So
yeah,
out there.
I love how you're putting yourself out there. I love how you're using your experiences in a positive and respectful way to encourage other people to be able to share their journeys and experiences as well. I guess I have a few more questions. One, now that you have gone through this process of healing and writing the book and everything, and you're a mother yourself, how do you now incorporate habits to make sure that you don't repeat the same things, the same cycles and traumas?
Well, my son is just turned 23, and I'm sure he is tired of me trying to pull words out of him. Because he is a lot like me in that he's very quiet and he's very reserved. But I'm that parent who's not just going to let you slide with, "How was your day?" "Fine." One word responses, like, let's communicate a little more, and leaving the door open for communication as well is important. The other thing as a parent that I have accepted is that we live in a different time, and these kids have different stressors beyond what we can even understand, because we can't necessarily relate 100% to this life that they're living with the access that they have to so much. And it's just different times. So I make sure that I have opened the door to him, that he understand that it's okay to ask for help. Mental health is number one in my book. And so I want to make sure that he knows, whether he comes to me or doesn't feel comfortable coming to me, that he feels comfortable going to a professional or speaking to someone else about his troubles, because I, unfortunately, especially with my advocacy work that I do in the community, I'm finding how, especially since COVID, the start of the COVID pandemic, the increase in mental health issues and how it's affected families and especially kids. I want to make sure that he knows that there's a window of opportunity to discuss those things with me or with someone else. So as a parent, I definitely am much more open to having these conversations and checking in.
I love that because I agree. I don't have children myself, but when I talk to my friends who have kids in this time, that is one thing. Like mental health is just so important, and having those conversations and how we all talk about how that just wasn't how we were raised, but knowing that this generation needs that and welcoming it and opening it, I think is a great thing because that's how I agree. They stop breaking those cycles. And I love that you have that type of relationship, especially with your son, because I feel like men, especially our young men, we don't talk to them the way that we talk to our young women about mental health.
Absolutely. And I think it's necessary. And they have just men in general have the insurmountable amount of pressure that sometimes as women we don't recognize because we're used to seeing them. It's what we've seen them in provider positions. They're the strength of the family. They get up, they go to work, they provide, they make sure that they keep us safe and protected. And that's a lot on a person who's also a human being and maybe dealing with their own things too. So it's important that we recognize that. And I just love this male movement of accepting mental health and the need to express themselves that we're seeing now too is amazing. So I want to make sure that we're empowering our young boys and our men as well.
Oh, I totally agree with you. That is something I'm very passionate about as well. I've been toiling myself with how to speak to men more because I've had a few men reach out to me about that. So I love that there's a space that you're creating for your son. And there may be even space as you start to explore your father relationship where there can be some conversations around that and how, men can heal through those type of conversations. Because yes.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a lot of that. And then another question I have is, what does your mom think about all this?
So she, at first, she wasn't sure to what extent I was. So when she saw the word secrets, she said, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "It's not the kind of secrets you're thinking. I'm not like telling."
Right, you're not laying everything on the line, right?
No. But when I sat down with her and explained to her what it was, she was very proud of the fact that I have been able to accomplish, number one, writing this book. She's very proud of the fact that I have been putting myself out there because she knows my personality better than anyone. And she's encouraging me through the process. I know there will be moments because she's been reading the Spanish translation because she doesn't read English.
Right.
So had not read the full book. And someone asked me a question about that, and I do want to mention that is someone asked, did your mother read the book before you put it out? And I said no, because I didn't feel like I needed her permission to do that because I felt one, like you said, I was being very respectful with telling my perspective of our upbringing and my experience. And number two, I was beyond the need to ask for permission to live my life, So, and I felt like I have not done that forever. So when I decided to do that, there was no question. I was not going to say, Mom, I'm writing this book. Are you okay with it? Because I knew it was going to be okay. But she is very much enjoying reading a lot about her past and how I'm expressing her strength and the pillar of strength and the matriarch that she is of our family. So as she continues to get through the book, there are some things that it was not aware of.
Right.
Some things, like the things I experienced in my childhood, she was aware of. We had discussed that. But a lot of the parts of my life that she was not involved in and didn't know what was going on, she's going to be surprised to see it. But ultimately proud that I'm sharing my story to help other people.
Well, I love that. And I especially love the part where you said that you were at a point where you realized you didn't need your mother's permission in order to do it, or her acceptance. This is what you needed to do. And I think a lot of us need to understand that that really, to me, is like the bridge key to being able to heal past some of these wounds. We have to recognize we're at this point. We don't need their permission to feel the way we do or to communicate. So I have so much respect for you for that. And I hope she likes the book. I think she's going to love it personally, because I'm like, it's a really great book.
Yes, I know she will. I know she will. I think it's just her getting over not knowing some things and reading it in print. But ultimately, I mean, if anything, now she's like, oh my God, you have to get on Univision. Univision is like everything.
Yes.
So it's literally the only channel she watches, the Hispanic television channel. And so if I can make it on Univision, it would totally make her life. So she's looking forward to everything I'm doing. And she, in so many ways, wants to see me transition out of advocacy work to the extent in which I'm doing it with crisis response, because she sees it is very draining and it does take a toll. But I feel like God has me where I am currently, and I'm juggling as much as I can possibly juggle, because he knows that this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I've been able to gain my strength. And the day he decides for me to no longer be an advocate in crisis response for our community, he's going to make that happen. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep on pushing, doing all the things I'm doing through my consulting firm and my public speaking and my writing, and just out here doing the best I can.
I love it. I think you're doing quite a bit and you're helping women, and we need more women helping us in that, because that's the only way that we're all going to heal. And so a lot of the things that you've experienced can become things of yesteryear and not things that just continue to repeat year after year. So I'm excited for that for you. So ma'am, I like to ask fun questions to kind of end it out. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking you a couple of fun questions, because I know you're working on fun, big letters. Remember, it was on your vision board.
Yes, that's that.
Okay. So first and foremost, since you did a vision board, I'm assuming it's fun, like your word of 2024, or is there another word that symbolizes you?
Surrender is actually my word of 2024.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing, and because that is jam-packed with so much. Because my need to make sure that everything lines up is challenged, and I have to surrender to whatever comes. And if that means don't do writing today and go explore the neighborhood, and that's the fun that I'm inserting in my week, then that's what I'm going to do. But surrender is definitely my word in so many ways. I'm just learning to just release.
I love it. I hope that you will have many moments where you surrender and just enjoy the moment, because you need that, deserve that. What is one song that right now kind of gets you going? Like, what's one thing that, kind of hypes you up? What's one song that helps you have fun and surrender?
And I don't know if it's going to sound as fun to you, but every time I hear Open Door Season by Dietrich Haddon, it just sets me off. One, I love the beat and the fun of it. Yes. And it reminds me, what I am trying to live out, Yes. So, you can see me if you ever catch me out in the Central Florida on I-4. I'm blasting Open Door Season. I'm in it. I'm in the moment.
I love that. I love Dietrich Haddon. Like, Dietrich Haddon got me through when my dad passed. His song "Well Done" was like, oh my God, that's all I could play. It just like even now I talk about it, makes me want to cry. So I love that. I love Open Door Season, and I just wish many blessings for you that way. I love it. So then now, obviously, the book is getting ready to come out. I know you are getting ready to have your launch. So tell us, like, where can we come and support you, and tell us all the details. And don't worry, everyone, I will put it in the show notes.
Yes. So the day of the release, which is May 14th, I am having a book signing at the Barnes and Noble Altamont Mall from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So please, if you are in the Central Florida area, and if you're not and you just want to fly here for the event, we will receive you.
Yes.
But I would really love to hug and hold as many women who really connect with my message. I would love to connect with you and see your faces if you are able to make it to that May 14th. Also, I will be at the Writer's Block in Winter Park on June 4th, also 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
So those are the two upcoming author events I have going on. And they can connect with me on my social media. I post live updates on leading up to the public release at Issalivestyle on Instagram, Facebook. And if you would like to connect with me professionally, I'm also on LinkedIn under Lin Green. If you would like to reach out for collaborations or any guidance or whatever, I am here.
Well, absolutely. Yes. Well, I promise I will share all of that in the show notes because we do want to connect. And yes, I'm looking forward to coming to your Barnes and Noble event. I cannot wait to meet you in person because yes, Shelby, we've never met. This is our first time talking and really talking outside of our prelim. So yes, I have to hug you because like I said, your book is so well written. It's so respectful, but so honest. Mm-hmm. And I love that you are putting your story out here in a way to show people that you actually can have healing and it doesn't have to rip the whole world apart.
No, it can be exactly what you want it to be so long as you're dedicated at just taking the steps to do it. And one of the hardest things is being able to put ourselves first. And we have to get to a point where we do that and also consider what a change that is going to be to those around us as well.
Absolutely. And they'll adjust. Mm-hmm. I just have one last question.
Yes.
What is one thing that you would want my audience to know about you that you haven't said today?
That I haven't said? That's a tough one. I feel like I've said so much.
I know we talked about that.
One thing about me that I have not said is that I am silly. I am very silly.
Okay.
And that's that's that little bit of that child. So if you follow me on social media, you'll see I have some of those silly moments that I share. I'm not always, professional poised, even though I probably am about 90% of the time. But I am definitely a silly person. Those who know me well and are very close to me have seen that side of me. And I am being very transparent and vulnerable on my social media page and sharing that silliness too. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
Oh, good. Well, we definitely will be following and enjoying that because I love that. Because again, it speaks to the fun. So all the silly, all the fun, have all the things because you deserve it,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I really want to thank you, like I said, for taking the time to sit down with me, share your story with me and other women who are looking to heal. And I definitely look forward to us supporting and sharing. So I'll make sure, guys, I have all of Lin's information in the show notes. And so that way we can follow, we can support you, we can buy your book. So because we want to make sure, I want to make sure women read it. Because like I said, guys, it's a very well done book. And I recently, like I said, had many conversations with women around trauma that they've experienced from their mothers. And I think that this is a good opportunity for you to see and read about how someone else may be experiencing the same thing that you have and how they were able to to recover, and you can recover too. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Lin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for creating space for so many wonderful women as you've done in the past. And I am very much looking forward to everything that you have going on. So I will stay plugged in.
Thank you. Yes, we are definitely going to stay connected. You're part of the family now. So we will be supporting and looking for ways that we can collaborate and grow together. Because, we need each other. So thank you. I really appreciate it. So, guys, that's it. That's this week's episode. Again, I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.